Which duck are you, David? I can't tell. Looking for the one with the most girlfriends. I thought I'd done quite well doing 9 hours writing one blog post yesterday, and then I went out for a walk and got triggered, and then went back and found that I was supposed to be doing another blog post because I work for Sabina Hossenfelder. I know that I definitely work for Sabina Hossenfelder now because I'm paying her £6 a month so that I can get my instructions from her. And I turned the mountain upside down, and all my line managers are upset, and one of them hung his bed out on the fence. It was a very wet bed. Code talk doesn't do anybody any good. But to the people that know, what I was doing wasn't code talk, I was telling the truth. As far as I know. As far as I know it to be. Like, it's windy as hell, and you're not going to hear a word that I'm saying. But never mind. What did I do last night? I watched Roger Penrose at Cambridge, and it was really interesting. I found out not what the second cohomology is, but I found out why I should be trying to find out what the second cohomology is. Because it might be a diagram that I drew in a ridiculous 100-page play about Aristotle, and in this play I think I drew a diagram which showed a pair of cubes spinning on an axis, and you were to imagine that each time they went round, that they were kind of pulsating, and they were undergoing an inversion through the central point about which they were spinning. And then at some random instant they would fly apart. And by looking at each cube individually, you were supposed to be able to know whether your cube was one or the other of the two. And then as soon as you knew that, you knew the other person had the other. But I don't know if I can prove this with cohomology groups, but I think that when one flips through the inversion, the other flips as well, and they flip into each other. So you don't know actually which one you have until you get back together again. So that until you take these two halves of the cube back together in one place, and then you can see whether one was, a spin up cube or a spin Z cube or a spin X or a spin Y, or I don't know how it was supposed to work, but maybe that's why I need to study cohomology. And Roger even said that there was a prize for somebody who could draw a diagram. So maybe there's Maybe there's money in it. And Roger's diagrams were what Roger's beautiful line drawings that he does. He does them. I didn't realize that he does them himself by hand. All those little line drawings in the Emperor's New Mind, he did with pen and ink, and they're really beautiful. He's got a technique for representing three-dimensional curves by dotting for the shadows, and he's got a kind of unique style. And he was also a genius with diagrams. Like I guess he's like a geometric version of Richard Feynman. He can think in diagrams, seems to me. He's even got diagrams named after him. But it was seeing his diagrams that made me think, oh, I want to be able to try these out and draw them quickly about quite complicated things. And that's why I wanted to do three-dimensional line drawings. And that's how I got into the idea of continuity being a question of your point of view. So it's something to do with projective geometry. So I spend all day today going back to this stuff about projective geometry and listening to a talk by Joan Lazenby last year about conformal projective geometric algebra, or just it's called conformal geometric algebra, and it's connected with plane-based geometric algebra. It's it seems very, very tidy. And so I went back to my file, very oddly called Beautiful Pairs, or Magnificent Pairs.sml, which started out being a way of pairing numbers and Gödel numbering trees, lists of lists and whatnot. But very quickly, for some reason, went on to a kind of abstract vector algebra. It wasn't a geometric algebra, it was more like abstract matrix algebra. I think what I was exploring was the fact that you could define matrix operations without actually committing to what it was you were ultimately dealing with. And I tried the technique I used to code this in standard ML is the same technique that I imagine one would use to code primitive operations like wedge and dot in geometric algebra. But when I started looking at this standard ML code, I went cross-eyed. It's been such a long time, and I've got no coca to chew. A part of it was a part of the mental processes depend on your neuron firing patterns, and they change depending on whether you're smoking or not, or whether you're chewing coca or not. Because I noticed when I gave up smoking at the same time I started learning functional programming. And before that, I had a way of thinking about things that was somehow encoded in nicotine firing patterns. And then when I wasn't smoking, I was thinking in kind of functional relation patterns. And then when I started smoking again in Bolivia, which was only in 2013, late 2013, I started smoking again when I went to San Jose de Uchupiamonas in the rainforest. And then all of my previous kind of imperative thinking, which was more related to electronics and digital stuff, that all came flooding back. But I was able to mix it with the functional programming because I was chewing coca and smoking cigarettes. So I had a fantastic time thinking about all sorts of things I'd forgotten about long ago. Because I was also smoking when I was a kid, while I was doing all that electronics, all that digital electronics, designing those computers. So that all came back to me. But now I seem to have lost the functional programming bit. I've lost the functional bit, full stop. I don't function anymore. I just talk shit. But I did quite well. All I needed was 5 weeks in a comfortable, secure accommodation. And that's all I wanted in Bolivia, was a few weeks down in Ivagazama. And I asked people, I said, please try and get me down to Ivagazama so that I can spend a few weeks in the rainy season just sitting with a computer and trying some of this stuff out. But instead they had to try and do a coup and cause a pandemic. God, what a nightmare. And the pandemic came straight after the coup and the civil unrest. It was all just like 2 freight cars on the same train that went through there. And I asked Sabina Hassenfeld if we could talk on Zoom. I wouldn't mind it being in public, it would be fine. We could have a nice chat and I could actually try and explain why I think that it's not necessarily bad to give physicists money to do research that will never be settled by experiments, because there have been so many experiments done about quantum mechanics and things, and it's the formalism that we've got wrong. It needs more cohomologies. And I'd also like to talk with Sabina about how I really liked her old YouTube videos. My favourite one is their song. She used to go into libraries and sing, and one of them was I'm a Little Funny, and I loved that. That was a fantastic song, Sabina. You are a little funny. And I'm a little tired. Here we are at the Crown and Punch Bowl. I think that's a good place to stop. Advertising their Christmas is special, Christmas with Us book now. Or email milena@camscuisine.com.